Hello. It's a very quiet day here. Perfect time to unplug and focus on yourself and being yourself, which is the thrust of this whole year-long practice, Samatvam, being essentially the same no matter what. Sounds so simple, hard to do. I'm dedicating today's practice as someone who lives in the United States with Independence Day on a Thursday to all those who refrain from setting off fireworks. I should say illegal fireworks because the regular ones are super nice, but the ones that go on all night long, it's an excellent practice in Samatvam. Excellent. To be the same, no matter what. And we're exploring a very big influence on us not being true to ourselves. The prospect of money or gain. I've mentioned before that I've overheard so many conversations where a young person says, "This is what I really want to do with my life." And the parent says, "You'll never make enough money at that. Don't do it." Money is valued over happiness. And this is exactly the challenge of being embodied. Embodiment, if you look at the chakra system, actually receiving physical self is related to Muladhara, which is the root chakra. It kind of helps, it's said to help create this structure. Muladhara is all about structure. It's got a square in it for the earth element, stability, steadiness. And it also has fear because we want to take care of this structure, which there's nothing wrong with taking care of the structure. But when we prioritize fear of what could happen over our own happiness, that becomes a challenge, because one of the reasons I mention this is in many spiritual traditions, the core of who we are is happiness or joy or love. Yoga philosophy says we're ananda, something like bliss. Christianity says love. Many other traditions will say something along the same lines. So whenever we choose another emotion, especially fear, over this innermost being that we are, we cheat ourselves in a way. So I really invite you today, as we consider the verse and as you go through life, to notice, what are you choosing? The ultimate goal of life, according to many traditions, is simply to be happy, to be happy. If you ask parents, and I'm only a pet parent, I've not had children, so I'm not telling anybody how to raise any child because I've never done it. But I've heard most parents, when they're asked, and even my own parents, what do you want for your kids for them to be happy? I mean, those who love you in any capacity will often say that, I just want you to be happy. Why don't we want that for ourselves? Anyway, here's a verse from Bhagavad Gita. So we're just going to the next one. The one that we've been looking at for the past few days has given us lots of food for thought. And this one is chapter 6, verse 8. The one content in self-knowledge and master of his sense organs, who sees clay, stone, and gold the same, is harmonized in samadhi. Samadhi is one of those words that is really difficult to put in English, so I use the original Sanskrit. One can think of it, if you look at the stages of Raj Yoga as taught by Patanjali, as becoming one with the essence of the universe. We have this idea of who we are, and many philosophies will say that who we are is really the same as what the cosmos is. cosmos, happiness, love. That's what it is. And when we look within, that's what we can find in ourselves. But do we choose it? And it's usually the sense organs. The eyes see something we covet. I need the money for that. So, money over happiness. Oh, it looks like that could be dangerous. I need to protect myself. We choose fear over happiness. I just encourage you today to notice how many times you do this. What are you choosing over your own happiness? Yeah, because we're all going to die. And I've mentioned, having worked with dying people, people who choose life from fear die much differently than those who have chosen happiness, because the habits you get into, if you get into habitually choosing fear, then when you get to the final transition, you're choosing it again. If you've been choosing happiness, when you get to the final transition, it's a whole different experience. Let's practice. So I know sometimes people join in for the first time. We do one round of a balance pose. I do something called one-footed prayer or tree. You can do any one you want. You can sit in a chair and do something similar, lie down. I'll be doing something different on both sides because my left knee, as some of you have heard, is a little, as they would say in Australia, dicky. I love that word. I have a dicky knee. Switch legs. All right. For our contemplation today, for a few minutes, I do invite you to consider how you approach situations in life. What guides you? Fear, anger, love, joy? And how does that affect your experience? 5 minutes. Welcome back. This is my gold. I love it. More than the metal. I hope you had some interesting insights, or at least just time with yourself. One of the most valuable things you can do is spend time with yourself, like any other loved one. Today's practice kind of harkens back to yesterday and plays into today. Today's practice is dedicated to Dolly Parton. I was watching a YouTube clip from one of the Jimmy Kimmel, I believe, and he had country music stars on reading mean tweets that people had sent them during their career. And there were some pretty mean ones, but one was to Dolly Parton, and Dolly Parton's reading this tweet, and it says, "I was just at a Dolly Parton concert, or was it a hookers convention? Couldn't tell." And Dolly Parton puts the phone down and just smiles at the camera and says, "I know my feelings should be hurt, but they aren't." And she's just like, "That's the way it is. That's the way I am. And I accept you for your statement. I accept those who come to my concerts, and I accept myself." She could have chosen anger or disbelief or defensiveness, and she just chose, that's how I am. She chose Samatvam, being herself. So good for you, Dolly. I'm going to remember that and use that line, I'm sure, at some point in life. So if a negative emotion comes your way today, maybe you can say, I could feel that, but I'm just not gonna. Who knows how that might change your world, that little approach. We'll check in tomorrow and find out. Until then.